Hi, I'm Sandy Kemsley of column2.com. I'm here today for the TriSotech blog with some practical design tips for when you're combining process and decision models. Let's start with the big three modeling standards for processes and decisions. There's BPMN for structured processes, CMMN for case management, and DMN for decisions. The standards tell you how to combine the models, and you can look at graphical versions like TriSotech's Triple Crown infographic to see how this works. Basically, process models and case models can call each other, and then either of them can call a decision model. Now, what the standards don't show is why you would use a particular model type to model different parts of your operations. Now, this might seem like a really silly question. If you have a process, you model it using BPMN. If you have a case structure, you use CMMN. And if you have a decision, you use DMN. But the real world is not that simple. In any sort of business operation, any sort of complex business operation, you're going to have a combination of process, case, and decision logic, and you need to be able to use more than one model type together. Now, when you start doing modeling, you'll find that process people and rules people come at these business models from different directions. Now, if you're a process person, like me, then you'll tend to start with a BPMN or a CMMN model, and that's going to show the overall flow. And then you're going to add in decision tasks where you need to call out to more complex decision models and then build the DMN models that are called from there. Now, on the other hand, a rules specialist will start by modeling the key decisions in the business operation, and then they're going to add processes to tie those decisions together. So they'll start with the DMN, and then they'll go back to the BPMN or the CMMN to tie things together. And you can argue about whether it's better to start with process or case or decision models, but if they're done properly, it doesn't really matter. Regardless of how you start, you end up with a set of interlinked models that describe your business operations. Now, the problem is that these are usually not done properly. So instead, we'll tend to use the one model type that we're most comfortable with instead of combining model types. Process people, or BPMN people in particular, end up modeling decisions as these crazy branching structures directly in a process model. Or they'll model case structures as looping flower models in BPMN, which is a terrible representation because it doesn't show anything of the logic of how you're moving from one stage to another that you would be able to do directly in CMMN. Now, decision people, on the other hand, end up modeling processes using really simple rule flows inside their decision management tool. So they don't have the full sort of process capabilities that you would have in a BPMN model. With any of these anti-patterns or bad examples of model design, the models are harder to understand and even harder to maintain because you're doing things that the models were not really meant to do. Just because a model executes doesn't mean that it's a good model. And it doesn't mean that it's understandable or maintainable. Now, a problem that occurs is that there's a lot of gray area here in this sort of design. Is when you have a really simple decision that's part of a process, sometimes it just seems more expedient to create the decision using branching in the process model rather than creating a separate DMN model and calling it from the process. Or if you have a really simple process and a complex decision model, you'll just use some simple rule flows to tie together those decisions rather than having a separate BPMN model. And if you use either of these approaches, what happens is that when your decisions or your processes get more complex over time, which they will, you'll have a single mixed up model combining what should be 2 or even 3 different types of models. That's a big mess, and it's a big refactoring job. You're usually better to start off with the correct model types. Now, this will mean that you have to use more than one of the modeling notations, and some of the models that you create in the first version are going to seem really simple, so it'll seem hardly worthwhile doing those as a separate model type and then calling them. But then you've laid the groundwork for adding in future functionality much more quickly. When you need to change your process, you're going to do that in your BPMN or your CMMN model. And when you need to change your business rules, it's in your DMN model. So it's a little more clear-cut as to how to be able to expand the functionality quickly in the future. That's it for today. You can find more of my writing and videos on the TriSotech blog or on my own blog at column2.com. See you next time.